Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar and the last of the webinar series. This part is about manage your eBOM to spare part process. My name is Carolina Hägg, and I will be your technical host for today's event. And presenting today will be Martin Toreskog.
Thank you, Carolina. I will share my screen. So let me know when you can see it.
We can see it.
Good. So welcome, everyone. And as Carolina said, this is the third session out of the three that we've done. We did eBOM to, or CAD to eBOM. We did eBOM to mBOM, and now it's eBOM to spare parts. I've been working here for approximately 18 years, working with Windchill and Creo and most of our product suites. And the agenda for today, I will, as I've done before, start with an introduction to the process, and then I will go into Windchill and demonstrate, and then we will end with some questions. I heard a beep, Carolina. Can you just verify that everything works still?
Everything works still.
Good. So, starting with some definitions. If you've been in the previous sessions, this shouldn't be too new to you. We have the part or the item, which represents the part number, basically. That acts as a placeholder for all documentation that describes the parts, and also creates the bill of material. And on the left-hand side here is the engineering bill of material. So the tool that we're using to create the service bill of material, which is the sBOM, is the same tool as I demonstrated last time when I did the eBOM to mBOM session. But now we will create a service bill of material instead of a manufacturing bill of material. So the service bill of material is here on the right-hand side. And what we do there is define first of all, the navigation structure. So if you would consider a traditional spare part manual, you would have chapters in that, and pages with illustrations and part lists and so on. But we can also then define the sort of navigation structure that this catalog contains spare parts, it contains wear parts, accessories, documentation, and so on. And we also define what to sell as a spare part. Should this part be sellable, or should it be included in a kit, for instance, or should it be not sellable at all? So we define that in the service bill of material. The process overview is a three-step process where we start with the engineering bill of material. We define the service bill of material in Windchill. We define the attributes. Typically, you would have remarks in your spare part lists, and you potentially can define serial numbers when a part is valid and so on. And of course, I will demonstrate this. The second step is to leverage the service bill of material and define the illustrations, where you add callouts and notes and so on. Then what we do is that we publish the service bill of material to a web-based aftermarket portal called Significant, where you can browse, search, and buy spare parts and access documentation and so on. So that's the sort of overview. The first step here is then to define the service bill of material. So you open the engineering bill of material in BOM Transformer. You define the part list. So these little icons here are representing the different part lists. So if we compare the eBOM to mBOM with eBOM to sBOM, typically there's much more restructuring going on the sBOM side, because here we define we basically define the part lists, and as you can see here, the structure in the eBOM is fairly flat, but perhaps I want one section or one illustration that defines the engine, one that defines the chassis, one that defines the steering, the wheels, the seat, and bumpers, and so on. So I basically create those, and then I drag and drop the parts into each part lists. And in the same way as for mBOMs, Windchill keeps track of the traceability. So in this case, I've taken the gear wheel and dragged that into the engine part list here. And even if they have different parents, as you can see, Windchill keeps track of that and grays out or makes the parts phantom that are consumed, and the parts that are not consumed are in shaded mode like this. And then we add the metadata to the sBOM if a part should be visible in the part list or not. So typically we consume all the parts in the sBOM, even if they're not spare parts. And then we define using attributes that in this engine here, it's that part, that part, that part, and those two parts that should be displayed in the part list and basically purchasable or sellable. When there's changes going on the eBOM side, it could be the case that for manufacturing, of course, we would have it sort of one-to-one. So if a part is replaced, we would typically remove that from the mBOM. But on the sBOM side, it could be the case that that product has already been delivered. So there are products containing the old parts, and we could then include both the old parts and the new parts in the sBOM and define serial number ranges and so on, which parts should be valid for each delivered product. And then, of course, you identify the changes as we can see that the parts are visible if they're not consumed on the sBOM side. The second step is defining the illustrations. So then we use the sBOM, the part lists that we've created, and create illustrations in Creo Illustrate. But we also leverage the information that we have defined in the sBOM, which of these parts should be sellable and so on. And so these parts here are the parts that I've defined as sellable in the sBOM. And then I create the illustrations. It's possible to have multiple illustrations in one Creo Illustrate file. So in this case, if I go back to the previous slide here, I have the chassis, the engine, the bumpers, the steering, the seat, the wheels, and so on. I could decide to create an illustration on each of these part lists, or I can create it on this level here. And then Creo Illustrate will understand that each of these part lists should be its own figure in Creo Illustrate. So here I have the different figures. If I double click them, I can then work on that, and the part list for each figure will then update. So all the parts in the part list will be included, but only the parts that I have defined as sellable should be included in the item list here. I add callouts, and Creo Illustrate automatically hotspots the callout, so it's possible to click it in the web and then potentially buy that part. The illustration is associative to the sBOM, so when you update the sBOM, you basically open the illustration, and then everything that you've done will be intact, and then you can explode the new parts and so on. Then we publish the sBOM to significant. Here's a screenshot of that. So here we have the navigation structure of the go-kart product. So we have spare parts, wear parts, accessories, documentation, and so on. And now I clicked spare part here, so then I see the different part lists with a preview of the illustration. If I click one of the part list, I will then navigate into that and display the content, the illustration, and the part list. Everything is searchable, of course, and any attributes on the parts, on the part list, on the documents, illustrations, and so on can be can be searchable and filtered. So it's quite a powerful search engine. If I click one of the part list here, I will then display the illustration. If I click the hotspots, I will expand the row, and then I can buy that part. So everything here is published from Windchill. With that said, I will move into the demo part of the session. And if you've been in the previous sessions, we have been working on the Lego car. So I will simply open this in BOM Transformer. So I click the Actions menu and then open in BOM Transformer, which opens up the window displaying the engineering bill of material on the left-hand side here. And currently I don't have a service bill of material, but I will shortly create one. So we can see the visualization. If I click a part, then of course that will be highlighted in the BOM, and vice versa. If I click a part here, it will be highlighted here. But if you've been in the previous sessions, that shouldn't be new to you. So what I want to do is create an sBOM based on this. So I will right-click this and say New Downstream Part. And here I have the option to define different types of parts. And in this case, it will be a part catalog, because that's the top level, so to speak. Module or a part list is the representation of the illustration and the list of parts. So in this case, I will create a part catalog node. In this configuration of Windchill, I have decided to automatically generate the number for that. The name, of course, is inherited from the eBOM. And when I did the mBOM in the previous session, I decided to duplicate the structure. But in this case, the structure on the first level below my Lego car or go-kart is completely different. So I will start from scratch, basically. And then I will click OK. I will then get a part catalog node. So as you can see, this is a completely different object than this. And we use that information when we publish the sBOM to Significant. So Significant understands that this type of part will become a catalog. So the layout on the web page is basically defined based on that. On the first level here, I want to define the different categories of the Lego car. So I will insert some new parts. I will select part catalog node, and then I will call them chassis, engine, steering, seat. Call it no, sorry. This is the next level. I would actually call it spare parts. Sorry about that. Spare parts, wear parts, accessories, perhaps. Accessories, documentation, and kits. Call it that. And then those parts are then added to my my go-kart. What I can do now is define the order in which these should appear. So I have a position attribute that I can define. Now it's only sorted on the number, but if I want to have kits after wear parts, for instance, I can then say 3 there, and then perhaps accessories, and then documentation there. And then sorting on the positioning attribute will then display that in that particular order. Now, if I want some part lists here below the spare part section, I will insert some more, insert multiple new, but now I will select module. of course, the display name of this could be part list if you prefer. In this case, the numbering of the module object is not does not have auto-generated number. So I will simply just call this, I will grab the number of the parent, and then I will add 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on. So I will just add these here. Maybe I want a different new row. Let's call it 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So now I want the chassis, I want the engine, I want the steering, the seat, the wheels, and let's see, bumpers. And as you can see, those are added here. So if you would think of this as a PDF of a spare part manual, these would be the different chapters. And then below the spare parts, you would then have the different sub-chapters here. And of course, I can add additional levels in the other sections, but for the sake of the demo and time, I will skip that. So what I will do now is restructure my BOM. So I will grab parts from the eBOM. So that part, that part, that part. Let's grab that one, and let's see if we have that one. So I will simply drag and drop these on top of the chassis part, chassis module. And if I turn on the occurrence status here, I will then see that these parts have been consumed, and then they show up on this side here. So these are the parts to start with that I want to use in my spare part catalog. Let's say I select that part. You can see that the content or the quantity of those are 2. So if I would drag and drop that, I would actually get that part and that part. But that part should be included in the bumpers module instead. So what I want to do is simply copy that part and potentially that part. So instead of copying it or dragging and dropping it here, I can copy from this side. Then I'm only copying that particular occurrence of that part. So if you have, let's say, 10 bolts and 5 of them should go into one and 5 of them should go into a different module, then you can simply copy from the visualization, and then we can see that is gone, and it should appear here on the sBOM side. So those parts there. Let's grab the seat, and I will grab the entire seat here. I will put that into the seat module, but I also want that part. That should be included in the seat as well. And as you can see, the quantity is 2. Then I will copy it from here, so I don't get all of them. Paste. And then I will not do the complete car here, but let's grab some of these, the exhaust assembly, the engine block, that one, the gear wheels, that one, and let's take the crank. Let's see if we have everything that we want. Or, oh, I forgot to hold control when I selected now, so I need to do it again here. Let's start with those. So I will move that into the engine. And then I will grab some more parts, that one, and the exhaust assembly. So if we click this, we can then see that the visualization starts to appear here. And then what I've done here, if I deselect everything now, if I select the chassis only, those are the parts that should be included in that part list. If I select the engine, let's deselect that one. If I select the engine, then I have all the engine parts, and then I have the seat part here. So what I've done now is create the foundation for my illustration. And what I can do now is define which of these parts within the engine, let's say I deselect that, and then I only select the engine, which of these parts are actually sellable. In this configuration of Windshield, we have defined that attribute on the usage link, which means that this bracket, for instance, could be a spare part in this part list, but it could not be a spare part in a different part list. So that flexibility is possible here. So then the name of this I've called hidden/visible. So let's say I want the part to be visible in the list. It should be included in the list, but the number should be hidden. Then I can select yes or no. So yes would mean that the number is displayed, and no would mean that the part is included, but I hide the number. So let's say that some of these parts are spare parts, and you can see that they appear here on the engine block perhaps shouldn't be a spare part, the exhaust assembly, and so on. So they start to appear here. So the illustration will be based on the entire engine, but it's only that part, that part, that part, and that part, which are spare parts. If I only included the spare parts in the sBOM, that would mean that the illustration would only contain that part, let's see, that part, if I select them correctly, those parts. And of course, when you illustrate something, you would want the sort of surrounding geometry to make it clear. What I also wouldn't get is the compare functionality. So when I've consumed all the parts, then I can see which parts have not yet been consumed. If I would only include the spare parts, of course, there will be parts missing, which would make comparing the BOMs a lot more difficult. So those are the two reasons. So I'm going to check in these guys here, select them, and then check in. And perhaps you noticed in the usage tab here, we have some more attributes like remark and so on. So if I want to make a note on a specific part, then it's possible to do it here. So this is if we go back here to the PowerPoint, what we've done now is this step here, restructuring the eBOM into an sBOM. I could now publish that to the web, but the next step will then be to create the illustrations of the different part list. And for the sake of time, I have already opened that in Creo Illustrate. So as you can see here, if I display all the entire BOM here, we can see that we have the Lego car, we have the different chassis, seat, steering, and so on. And for each of the part lists that we have in the BOM, Creo Illustrate has created one figure for each of them. So in this first one, -1, what I want to do is display only the chassis. And you can see that the item list here displays the parts that I have selected as spare parts. So what I want to do is select these parts, and to make the illustration as clear as possible, I want to make all the other parts phantom. So I'm going to invert my selection to select the other parts, and then I'm going to create or make them phantom like this, so it's clear which of these parts are actual spare parts. I will just select, and my task as an illustrator would then, of course, be to explode these assemblies. So I will drag them out like this, maybe add some explode lines, perhaps move this part a little bit to the side. Let's see, like that. Explode these guys. And then that part. And then add some some explode lines, and then I will just select the parts and then add callouts to this. And of course, I can make this. Let's move these around a little bit. So if I click one of these callouts here, you can see that it selects the part in the item list and vice versa, which means that this sort of area here is what we call hotspotted, which allows us to basically do stuff with it on the web. For instance, expand a row in the list of parts and add a add to order button. So this is my first illustration, and then I move on to the next one, which would be the seat in this case. And then I would do similar things here. So I would maybe select a predefined orientation and then start to explode the assembly in the way that I want. And then, as you can see, the item list here is then also based on the sBOM. And then I would go to the next one and next one and next one. So if we now go back to this was the second step. The third step here is a completely automated step where we take the sBOM and publish that into significant. And just to show you, if I go to an existing part here, let's see if I have that in my recent, I think it should be this one. So this I have done I've done before, but it's sort of the similar structure. We have spare parts, we have chassis, engine. In this case, I've actually added the bumpers, and I added sub modules here. So front bumper, side bumper, rear bumper. And if we would go to significant now, or actually I want to show you where this part is used. So I go to the where used tab, and then we can see that the go-kart is included in a Lego Technics part catalog, and the Lego Technics is included in the Lego. So if I visit the Lego structure now, we can see that Lego contains Lego City, Lego Movie, Lego Ninjago, and here we have Lego Technics. And below that, I have added the go-kart that contains my sBOM, but it also contains some Porsche, Chevrolet, Bugatti, and so on. So I'm also building the navigation structure for the complete aftermarket portal, and that's what we're going to look at now. So this is significant, which is an aftermarket platform for searching and browsing spare parts, documentation, software, and so on. And we have the different nodes here, which you saw in Windchill, these first levels here. If I go to Lego Technics now, perhaps I need to I didn't lose my internet connection again, Carolina, right?
No, it's
No.
working.
Good. Let's see. I think I was logged in before, but if I waited too long, it will log me out. So now I'm in the Lego Technics, and then we see the different catalogs here, and we will go into go-kart, and these are the sort of categories of this product, and we have spare parts, wear parts, accessories, documentation, and so on. Here we actually have some assembly instructions as well. So if you joined the eBOM to mBOM process, that would be process plans that would be included there. But let's focus on the spare parts. Here we can see the preview of the illustrations and the different modules or part lists here. If I go into the chassis, for instance, and here we can see the illustration that I've done. If I click a part, it will be highlighted in the BOM, and also add the possibility of actually adding this to my shopping list or order cart. Also, if I click a part here, it will be zoomed in and highlighted here. So this is the hotspot information that I talked about in Creo Illustrate. If we take a look at the bumpers here, that we saw that in Windchill I had added submodules to that. So these guys here are divided into front bumper, side bumper, and rear bumper. So if I scroll down here, I can actually see the lower level part lists here, or I can click the structure here as well. And then the same way it zooms in, and then I can add that part to my shopping list. Here is one example where I have decided to include this pin part in my part list, but it's not possible to buy that particular part separately. Or it could be possible, but I've also added that part to a kit. And that means that I will get the kit number here instead. So I'm hiding the number of the actual part, but I reference the kit. And then I can add the kit to that. And I can also visit the kit. If I go here, I can take a look at what that kit looked like. So I've included all of these parts in that kit. So searching in Insignificant, you can search for either name of parts. If you have the number, of course, you can search on that. You can perform searches in your order cart. So the same search works here. So I can add parts directly here. I can also search for any attributes on the parts, on the documents, and so on. So I think I have RDA. I've added a description to some of the objects here. I can use that as a search criteria. So basically any information that you want to be searchable, and if you have it in Windchill or if you have it in your ERP system, everything can be collected and made available here in Insignificant. So I think with that said, I will leave it for questions if we have any, Carolina.
Yes, we do. We have a couple of ones. But I have to say, it's always nice to know that you can always get an extra front bumper to your Lego go-kart. It's always nice.
Yes,
Just in
absolutely.
case. Accidents happen even with Lego.
Yep.
The first question we have here is, how much of this functionality is included in Windchill as standard? Are there any other modules required?
Yes, you need the license for BOM transformer. that's what you need to be able to create the sBOM. And of course, significant is a separate application. So if you want to publish this to significant, that's an application on its own. But just to be clear about this, this is the sort of overview process. It could be a different system here. So significant is not mandatory in order to create sBOMs. We have customers that use Windchill to create sBOMs, but they have a different aftermarket or e-commerce system. We also have customers that are using Windchill to create sBOMs, but have a different illustration tool. We have customers that only have significant and don't have Windchill, and so all of these combinations are possible. But in Windchill, you need BOM transformer license in order to create them.
And we go to the next question. Is it possible to have different types of classifications for parts that is marked as spare parts, like local store or central store?
Yes, absolutely. What we could do as well, classification in Windchill, of course, is possible to use in this process as well. But where the part is sort of sent from could be, it's not mandatory to manage that in Windchill. Typically, the storage locations and so on are managed in the ERP system. So if we go to Väderstad here, for instance, and browse some parts, here we can see that here we fetch the storage location or the warehouse from ERP. We can display the stock level as well, if it's available or not. But yes, classification can be used. Is the short answer.
Great. And the next question is, how do you handle an existing spare? If a new product uses an existing part that is already used as a spare, is it highlighted so you do not create a duplicate spare?
Let's see. Perhaps I would need some clarification on that. But what I didn't show here, which could be the case for some of the audience here, is that I created these completely separate from the engineering bill of material, because this is a fairly flat structure like this. But many companies, as Väderstad, for instance, they have sort of a modular eBOM. So if we go here to Väderstad and search for Ferox, let's see that one. They actually create their engineering bill of material on this level. So they have a drawbar, they have frames, and so on. So their sBOMs is based on these sort of modular levels. And if they have created the sBOM based on the frame here, for instance, and reuse that in another product, of course, then you've done all the work. So when moving parts from the eBOM into the sBOM, Windchill will recognize that this part actually has an sBOM already and reuse that, so you don't have to do that again. So it will basically identify that. And the reason why it does it is that when I create the downstream part, as I did this here, Windchill creates a link between the eBOM and the mBOM. So if you have a frame, for instance, and you've created a module based on that, when you copy that from eBOM to sBOM, Windchill will then identify that. Don't you want to use the sBOM instead? Hopefully that answers the question. But otherwise, I think you will provide my email address and so on, Carolina, for follow-up questions.
And then we have a question here. How are you defining kits?
Kits are defined as these guys as well. It's just an attribute that, let's see, if we go here, I think I have that edit part. on a module, we have an attribute called kit. And of course, I don't have this in this environment, but it's an attribute that we set to yes. And if we do that, if we take a look here in when I visited the this one here, and significant will calculate and find this part if that part is included in a module with a kit attribute set to yes, it will automatically add the drop-down list here, allowing me to add that kit to my cart. So yeah, you create a module, set it as a kit, and then you add the parts you want to have in that kit. It could be included in the eBOM, but you can add separate parts. So I can insert existing parts that may not be in this particular sBOM. But yeah, so you can either drag and drop them or search for them and add them. Yep.
Good. And then we have one more question. Can we set up the system to inherit WT part number from engineering part /BOM to service part /BOM?
Yes. So if I would, let's see, if I would copy that and paste that into, yeah, this one, for instance, I can actually paste it as a new part. And let's see, yes. If we go here, let's see. Here you can see that it inherits the number of that particular part. So if the auto numbering is not defined, it will actually inherit the number automatically. So yes. And any attributes on the parts, let's say you have weight and specification and whatever on the parts, that can be inherited to the sBOM as well. So you basically define which of the part attributes should be inherited from eBOM to sBOM. That's a configuration in Windchill. Yep.
Good. And we have time for one final question.
Yep.
How is the sBOM published to the web?
Yeah, I didn't show that now, but what we do is we schedule an export in Windchill. So we base that on the modify stamp. So when was this last modified? And we do this for all the different objects. So part catalog nodes, modules, parts, documents, illustrations, and so on. And then every night we schedule that export, and it's an incremental export. So if I publish the entire database today, and then tomorrow I have modified one single part, then we only export that. And then the import to significant is also automated. So if I modify a part today, it will be available in significant the next day. And of course, we base this on state as well. So typically, we don't want anything that's not released, perhaps, on the web. So when we do the incremental publishing, we will exclude parts and yeah, all the different objects based on the state of the objects.
Okay, great. Well, this was it. So thank you everybody for participating in this webinar series. It's been fantastic to have you all participate. Thank you, Martin, for a huge contribution and a fantastic presentation as usual.
Thank you, and feel free to contact me and or Carolina if you have more questions.
Yes. So once again, thank you and have a really nice day now. Bye.
Bye-bye.